Hello everyone, this is Vikram and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about my experience giving the CKAD examination. So I gave my CK exam last month, and after 5 days of giving that examination, I immediately gave my CKAD examination, I think within 6 days. So in this video, I'm going to talk about my experience taking this examination and the technical instruction, the possible questions that you will be tested in the exam, and also I'll explain about the exam UI. So let's understand about the exam first. So this certification exam is for Kubernetes engineers, cloud engineers, and other IT professionals. So who are responsible for building and configuring cloud native applications with Kubernetes. So this certification is created by CNCF. And one who qualified the CKAD exam can define application resources and use Kubernetes core primitives to create or migrate existing applications, and also configure, expose, and scale applications that are meant to run in Kubernetes. And also the successful candidate will be comfortable working with container images, like creating container images and then pushing container images to the repositories, and applying cloud native application concepts and architectures, and also working and validating Kubernetes resource definitions. And about the exam, it is 2 hours online exam, and exam is remotely proctored via streaming audio and video, and through screen sharing feeds, but the proctor will only communicate through chat, so you will not have any voice communication. And the exam consists of 15 to 20 performance based questions that are to be solved on the command line running Linux. I got 16 questions, and a score of 66% is sufficient to pass this examination. I passed it with a score of 90%. And exam environment is currently running Kubernetes version 1.25. So since it is already latest, so we will not be asked any questions on the upgrading the Kubernetes cluster, because those questions comes basically in the CK exam. And results will be emailed 24 hours post completing the examination. I remember I got the results after 23 hours, and this certification is valid for 3 years. You will also get a digital certificate provided through Credly, so you can share that Credly link directly through to your LinkedIn and Twitter profiles. And if you want to see this score, you can go to this Linux Foundation training portal, and you can view a certificate and exam score. And before the examination, you should also have this PSI secure browser to be installed, because directly you cannot use your own Chrome or any other browsers. So you need to download this browser. But if you have already downloaded it for CK exam, so you don't have to download it again. And also, you have to have a clean desk and working environment. So the proctor will ask you to simply show your complete room. So if he finds any unnecessary things like books, pen holders, water bottles, and any other stuff on the desk, he'll ask you to remove them. And you should also have fast internet connection, because if you are giving CKAD for the first time, so you'll have to download this browser. So you should have a good internet bandwidth as well. And also turn off any background apps such as OneDrive and any antivirus. And also, if this exam is interrupted due to any connection problem, so you should not panic, but simply you can restart your PSI browser and resume the examination. And also you should have good webcam and microphone, because the proctor is going to test both your environment, and also your microphone will be continuously monitored. And one more thing you need to remember is that exam interface is little sluggish but manageable, since it is all browser based examination. So you will see that lag in the exam interface, but that is fine and manageable. So kubectl is pre-configured and pre-installed, so you don't have to set any alias for Kubernetes. Kubectl k equal to kubectl, because these are all set. And also bash completion is also enabled by default. Your registration will also get you access to 2 free CAD examination simulated exams by Killer Shell. So I highly suggest you to go through these simulated sessions. Myself, I avoided it because I already did, so I have real-time experience working with Kubernetes. So I simply skipped it, because I did not take much time preparing for this examination. And of course, if you fail this examination, you have an option to retake it once you fail it. And once you schedule the examination, you can only reschedule it before 24 hours or actual scheduled date. So once 24 hours is passed, so you cannot basically reschedule. So the questions are little lengthy. So what I observed is CKAD questions are little lengthy. it takes a while to complete the task, but again it depends upon the weightage. So if the weightage is less and the questions are very lengthy, you can flag that question and move on to the next question. And also one important thing and one difference between CK and CKAD exam is that CKA doesn't test you anything on the container runtimes, Docker file, etc. But here you need to have working experience with Docker files, because they are going to ask you to build container images through Docker files. In some scenarios, they might even ask you to change the Docker file. So you should be very comfortable with working with container runtimes like Containerd and Docker, because either of these container runtimes will be installed in the examination environment. I need to know how to work with CRI/CTL and Docker to build the container images, and also how to push these images to the repository. So let's talk about the domains and competencies tested. So from app design and build category, so you'll be asked 20% of the questions. So that includes defining, building and modifying container images. And also they'll ask you to create some jobs, cron jobs. They'll also test you on multi-container patterns like sidecar, init, ambassador patterns. So using persistent volumes and ephemeral volumes like MDDR and host path are common. So these will also be tested in these competencies. And coming to the app deployment part, so the weightage is 20%. So you'll be asked about the deployment strategies. So I myself got a question from Canary deployment strategy. So of course the questions will be very clear on how to perform this Canary. Usually the canaries are much better performed using service mesh utilities like Istio. Since Istio cannot be installed and Istio is not a part of this CKAD examination, so they'll ask you to perform canaries by using scaling and scaling type. So let's say if they ask you to direct 30% of the traffic to one instance and 70% of the traffic to one instance. So you should be able to understand how to do that by having changing the labels on the services, and also increasing the replicas of one version and decreasing the replicas of another version. So you need to understand how to do this using kubectl scale operations. And also coming to the application environment configuration and security. So you'll be tested for 25% like RBAC, including cluster role binding, role binding, service accounts, requests and limits, limit ranges, resource quotas, config maps and secrets, understanding how security contexts can be configured, and also how to use a specific service account with the pod definitions. So all these comes under this category. And coming to the maintenance and application observability, so you'll be asked about the readiness liveness probes, and also on how to fix these API deprecations. So let's say they'll give you a deployment file that is using old version of the API. So they'll ask you to convert this into newer version of the API. So this not only includes changing the API version, but also how the complete deployment file is framed. So you need to understand how to migrate such deprecated APIs, and also how to see container logs if you have multi-container pods. So how do you fetch logs of a particular container among all the containers of that pod? So even in this area you will be tested. And coming to the services and networking, you should have clear understanding of how the networking works, and also how to get the endpoints, how to see the services. So if the endpoints of a service object are not created, so why it is not created? So basically everything revolves around labels and selectors. So in many cases these labels are configured incorrectly, so that the endpoints are not created. So you should be able to understand the labels and services concepts, and how to configure or expose an application through cluster IP, node port and load balancer, how ingress resources work. Basically not be asked how to deploy ingress controller, so but they'll ask you how to create an ingress resources and do path or host based routing, etc. And coming to the acceptable testing locations, your workspace should be free of clutter, as I already said. And you should have only your computer, keyboard and mouse, so no external displays are entertained. And the proctor will only communicate through chat. He will inspect your entire room by asking you to rotate your laptop camera. And there should not be any posters. Some basic posters are permitted, and also you should have excellent lighting in your room. A clear water bottle with no brand stickers are permitted. In fact, they'll ask you if you have any water bottles to show to them. And they'll also ask you to show your phone, and you need to keep it away while they watch you. Everything is remotely monitored. Even you need to produce your valid ID card before starting the examination. So once every tests are completed, the proctor will release your examination, and from that time your examination time will actually start. And coming to the technical instructions, you need to have PSI browser to install. So make sure that you have it been privileges to install this browser. If you're taking this examination from office laptops, so I'm pretty sure that you'll not be allowed to install any third-party software. So make sure that you take only from your personal PCs. And also all these links are allowed, like kubernetes.io/docs, kubernetes.io/blog, and also you can go through Helm documentation as well. And in each and every question they'll also give you these hyperlinks, so directly you can click on these hyperlinks so that the documents will be opened in the browser itself. You can also open this discuss.kubernetes.io documentation, and if you have to get root privileges, you can do sudo -i, and also direct Control-C Control-V will not work for copy and paste methods. You should use Control-Shift-C to copy, Control-Shift-V to paste. And in any case, do not restart the base node. So base node will be with the name node-1. So you should not restart your base node. Simply restarting your node will not restart your examination. And for CKAD, there are 4 clusters. So you need to execute your tasks in any of these 4 clusters. And before each question, they'll also give you a command to switch context. So even if you don't know how to use this command completely, so you don't have to worry, because the whole command including the context name will be given. You can simply copy and paste in your terminal. And also if your task requires you to SSH into any control node or any worker node, so you can simply do by using SSH followed by the name of the node. And also remember, once you SSH into any node and once you're done with any task, you need to come out of that SSH session and you need to go back to your base node for executing the another command. And also nested SSH commands are not supported. And in any case, if the namespace is not specified, you should by default take it as default namespace. And also if you have to execute any command in any other node, so instead of SSHing into that node and executing the command, you can simply use SSH space name of the node space within the quotes you can use the command. So this is as good as SSHing into the particular node and executing that command. And before the examination, as we already said, so you need to have this PSI online security check completed to see whether your current system is compatible to take the examination. On the examination day, you can log in 30 minutes early. And then the first thing you need to do is download and install this PSI browser, which is nearly 350 MB. So that's what I said. You need to have good bandwidth, and also make sure that you have enough data in your data pack so that you'll be able to download this 350 MB file and give your examination. And you need to produce your valid ID card, so that is already discussed. And coming to the PSI browser, so this is the the overall you have the browser. So on the left hand side you will have the question numbers, and then you have the change context related commands here, and also the question and the sort of description to that question. On the right hand side is your Linux desktop, so you can have your browser and all terminals open. This is also there, and on the top all the chart related commands and other options. So if if you want to skip any of the questions, so let's say first question is little lengthy and you wanted to come back it at a later stage, so what you can do is instead of going to the next question, so you can flag it. So once you flag it, so that flag will appear on the list of questions. So if you click on the button over here, so it will open the list of questions. So there you'll see a flag, so that you'll understand that this question has been skipped by you. And once you are done with any question, you can simply go to the next question. Of course you can come back to any question even if you completed that particular question. And this is the actual UI. So here you have this live chat option if you want to contact the proctor. and this is used to zoom in and zoom out of the UI. On the left hand side you have the total questions, and then you have the question description, and also on the top you'll have the change context. Here you'll have the flag this question and the other options, and here your photo will appear. So once you're done with the examination, if you don't know how to end your examination, you can simply ask your proctor through live chat, or else you can simply click on end exam. Once your exam is ended, you should also end the proctoring session. And after the examination, your results will be emailed 24 hours, once your exam is completed. So you'll get two emails, one from Linux Foundation, the other from Credly. And also in order to see basically your marks and all, so you need to go to your Linux Foundation site. And coming to the exam topics that are going to be tested, so they'll ask you to create some pods and also add labels to the existing pods, how to create the deployments, services, PVPVCs, ingress resources, namespaces, jobs and cron jobs, manual scheduling, like through nodes, node names, node selector, taints and tolerations, in some cases affinity also. So config maps and secrets, network policies, volumes, JSON path, resource quota, limit ranges, probes, environment variables, deployment strategies, namespaces, security context, API deprecations, working with the Docker files, working with Helm package manager, requests and limits. So these are the various topics that are going to be tested. And coming to the common questions, so they might ask you to list all the namespaces in the cluster and redirect the output to a file. And in many cases they'll ask you to simply create a pod with certain name, with certain container image and container name. Okay, they might also ask you to add some labels at the time of creation itself. So all you have to do is you have to, instead of copy pasting the whole YAML, you can just type the imperative command and then try run it to get the pod manifest file, and then create a secret and mount it as an environment variable. In some cases they'll also ask you to mount it as a volume, and then create a deployment with some X image and Y tag, and then change the tag to a different number, and then record the changes, set the memory request for a pod to XMI. So there can be an indirect questions as well. So in this case here, so they're asking you to set a memory request to some XMI, but here, so they did not give the memory limit. Instead what they said is they're asking you to limit that higher limit, that is the memory limit, to half of the maximum allowed for pods of that namespace. So in order to understand this concept, you need to understand, so what are the defaults that you can set for a particular pod in that namespace. So this concept is from the limit range. So you need to get these sort of questions as well. And coming to the RBAC, as we discussed, service accounts, roles, role bindings, cluster role bindings will be tested. And then they'll also ask you to add a secondary container and also read the logs from the main container. So in this case, we need to mount a common volume for both the containers. So in this case, since this volume should be temporary, you can go for mtdir, and also create a pod with 2 containers, and every information will be provided to you. And then create a network policy, like it can be an ingress policy or egress policy, and then setting the CPU and memory limits, adding an ingress route to an already existing ingress resource. And they might also ask you to debug an ingress route which is not working. So mostly in these scenarios, they might give wrong labels, or they might give you the wrong service names inside the existing ingress resource. So they'll ask you to fix it. And also coming to the security context, they can ask you to disable container privilege escalation, or run as certain user. So every information will be provided here. And also create a canary deployment that routes only 30% of the traffic, or some 50-50 traffic split. Again, this is also expected. And then create a pod and expose it via node port on this particular port number. Create a cron job or create a job. Sort all pods by the order of creation. So in this case, you need to understand how to use sort by commands, or using custom columns, how to use the JSON path. So you need to understand all these things. And they might also ask you to filter some pods by labels and then redirect to a file. So these scenarios, they might look very easy, but if you have hundreds of pods, and if you don't know how to filter through labels, then it's going to be very difficult for you. And then they're also going to ask you exclusively on Helm charts, how to release a software through Helm chart, how to upgrade it through Helm chart, how to use custom values file. So these will be tested. So you should know how to use artifacthub.io to basically pull your Helm charts, so all those operations. And then you'll be also asked to work on the Docker files, like creating a container image through Docker file. So in this case, they'll have container runtime pre-installed in your environment, like Docker, or containerd, podman. So you need to also understand what are those client utilities to talk to these container runtimes, like CRI/CTL for containerd, Docker for Docker daemon. They'll also ask you to mount a service account and then copy service account token to a file, migrate a deployment from one namespace to another namespace, and creating a job that runs this particular image and this particular command for these many successful iterations, and then adding readiness and liveness probes on certain endpoints, how to fix a deprecated API issue, how to use PV and PVCs, how to create TLS secrets, how to create generic secrets, how to create a config map and mount it as a volume. And they'll also ask you to fix an endpoints of a service, like if endpoints of a service are empty, how do you fix it? Changing the service type from cluster IP to node port. Okay, in this case you can use any number of techniques. And also how to create a resource quota, how to create an existing service account, how to use an existing service account with the deployment. So these are the very common questions that will be asked. So coming to some of the tips, exam is very easy if you have clear cut understanding of the topics, and if you know how to browse the complete kubernetes.io documentation. So trust me, everything is already there in the documentation. You should know how to search for that particular topic using correct keywords, and also make sure that you practice everything before going for the examination. Have a local cluster like Minikube or KubeADM for your preparation. And in fact, I just completed my exam in only 1.5 hours, even though I have 2 hours, because if you practice it very well, so it won't take much time to answer or complete all these tasks. And also one thing that you need to remember is, do not set any aliases or any shortcuts in your environment, because it's not at all needed. So I highly suggest you to, even if it is needed, just type kubectl complete command without even setting the alias, so because you'll have enough time. And wherever it is possible, always try to use imperative commands, because imperative commands are much faster. And also, if you don't know how to use that imperative command, use -h at the end of the command to get more information about that command. And also verify your answers by checking the logs or by using describe commands. So flag a question if you need more time to solve it, so that you can come back to that question at the later point. And if any resource is taking more time to delete, you can force delete it using this option, like grace period 0 and -- force. And let's say that if they ask you to get all the namespaces and rewrite to a file, and if they only ask you to take out the name, so there is an extra option called -o name, similar to -o white, -o YAML. So -o name is also available for you. And try to use short names like PO, SVC, CM for config map, persistent volume claim. And for network policies, you can use netpol. And also learn JSON path, because you'll get at least one question in the examination. And of course, JSON path is very, very easy, so it's not very complex also. So always make sure that you have enough hands-on on JSON path before attempting the exam. And coming to my CKAD, so I got 90 and the passing score is only 66. And that too, I just gave this examination within 5 days of completing my CK. Because there is no much difference between CK and CKAD, except for some topics into application management, like liveness probe, readiness probe, resources, etc. So there is no much difference. And this is the badge offered by Credly, so you can share this directly to your LinkedIn or Twitter profiles. And my final words: exam is easy if you know how to use this KA documentation of very effectively. Practice all the topics on a live cluster, because simply just going through the documentation doesn't make any sense unless you practice and get some hands on all the commands. And also, don't freak out, do not keep an eye on the timer, because you'll have plenty of time. So in my what I suggest is, instead of doing some random doing random questions in the examination, try to do it in an order. You will have enough time. And also, don't keep an eye on the timer, you'll have sufficient time. And that's it for this video. Thank you, and I wish you all the best for your examination.